boy, was that fun, and was that something that deserves to be talked about in the most positive way? Um, a candidate for best win of the season, and maybe that's even disrespectful to question it. Um, wow. Yesterday afternoon, the New York Knicks defeated the San Antonio Spurs 114 to 89. So they blew the doors off them, ran them out the damn gym at Madison Square Garden. And apparently, I didn't even know this because the Spurs, they were on an 11 game win streak. I know they've been very good this year. They're the 2 seed in the West, I believe, and I had no idea. They were on a streak that they were on, and they had won 11 games in a row until Ruco mentioned it after the game. So that was awesome. I can't tell you I had the utmost confidence that the Knicks were going to win this game just because their regular season has gone in a way that would make you think they could either win or lose that game. As stupid as that sounds and cliche, just because they sometimes decide they want to play and sometimes they decide they don't want to play. So it could be a good team, it could be a bad team. You don't know what you're getting. But at the end of the day, we look up and the Knicks are continuing to play good basketball this year. But this was one of the funner ones, one of the more fun wins of the season. And I want to get into it because there's a lot to unpack. And, we could talk about Jalen Brunson, who had a fine game with 24 points. And as Cat had another double-double with 14 rebounds. And I think this whole thing, a lot of this, is going to be about this whole thing that we've been discussing all season. How the Knicks handled these cross matches. And I think first and foremost, you got to give a big shout out to a Nick who we're talking about the 51st pick in the draft. We're talking about a kid who did not get, much hype at all at the beginning of the season, and somebody I don't think any of us expected to make a huge impact, even with the new head coach, Mohamed Diawara. I think you have to hand him the game ball from the second unit tonight or last night just because of the way he changed the game. It's his third game ball of the season. 14 points in the game for Mohamed Diawara, 4 rebounds. He had a steal, he had a block, but it's not even that. It's the 3-point volume that I want to get into regarding Mohamed Diawara in a minute. The aggressiveness, the confidence, and that's kind of going to be the story of this episode because as you saw in the opening minutes of this game when the starting lineup was out there, when it was Brunson, Josh, Mikal, OG, and Carl, you continued to see the issues. The aggressive help coverages that they were sending off of Josh Hart with Wemby, right? And so the first number of minutes in this game, the Knicks were playing brutal half-court offense because of much of the usual. Wemby was on Hart, so it completely mucked up everything in the half-court because Wemby was able to roam and help and play drop the entire time. You had Wemby helping off of Hart and 2 Brunson's drives and 2 Cat's drives and Cat's post-ups. And he was helping to Hart drives or just stopping Hart drives when Hart decided to pass up open threes and drive right into him. And that was completely throwing everything off. It was the most ugly half-court basketball perhaps of the season. And Knicks fans were pissed off, including myself. And you had Wemby playing in drop coverage on those Josh Hart pick and rolls. And when you have Wemby in drop, and when you have their point of attack defenders, their guards playing excellent defense off the pick and roll up top to stay attached and to just fight over and stick with the guard, so when Brunson came off He was forced into a long two. He was forced into a tough mid-range look, which you live with if you're San Antonio, as opposed to giving him the open three off the drop. That's the point of drop coverage. The big protects the basket, but you're relying on the guard to fight over the top. And they were doing that, so Brunson was being forced into long twos, ran off the line. And then if you hit Hart, who was rolling off those picks, well, then now Hart's rolling right into Wemby, who's, again, in drop at the basket. And even if you went away from the Brunson-Hart pick and roll and you went to the Cat pick and rolls to get Cat the small off of the switch, right, to get him Fox, who was on Brunson, again, Cat was either forced into a long two, which the Spurs were living with, or Cat would drive onto the small to the basket, good, but you have Wemby waiting there for him. So that was the entire description of those first couple of minutes or 6 minutes, whatever it was, with the starting lineup out there. And then as the game progressed, you saw how much better it got for the Knicks. And the Knicks were able to counter those help coverages in a number of ways. I'm not really going to go into any particular order, but there were a number of reasons the Knicks were able to counter. But I think we have to, again, start by complimenting Mo Diawara. And they rode with Mo Diawara for 15 minutes in this game because of the way he was able to counter those coverages. Mo Diawara, as opposed to Josh Hart, when you saw him in the first few minutes, Josh Hart was passing up a lot of open threes. Mo Diawara was shooting with confidence, and he was shooting it every time he got it, especially as the game wore on, because there were a couple of shots early that he took a few seconds to shoot it with, but as you got to that second half, the dude was letting it fly. And I don't care if the shot falls, I don't care if the shot misses. Him taking the open threes, and he took 13 threes in 14 minutes and 55 seconds in this game. That's what you want to see, because him taking those open looks that he's given from three forced the Spurs to go to a zone coverage at one point. It forced the Spurs to start closing out to him more, which is going to open the drive game, right? That's what we always talk about with Josh. When Josh Hart takes those threes more and more, that's going to force those closeouts, which is going to open his drive game. And that's what he really wants to play like. So I thought that was huge for Mo Diawara. I also, though, want to point out one of my favorite things that I saw come the top of the second half. The Knicks were setting their ball screens a lot higher up on the floor. And when you do that, when you screen closer to the logo, you force Wemby up away from the basket and into action more. And two, you create more room for Brunson to walk into pull-up threes, right? So going back to that first point, forcing Wemby up away from the basket, that cleared up room for Hart to roll and make his back cuts off the pick and roll before Wemby could recover to the roll side of the screen, right? And you saw Hart get a couple baskets at the top of the second half because of that. If you run pick and roll barely above the top of the key, when that point of attack defender comes off and he's chasing you, he chases you into a long two-pointer. But if you run your pick and rolls higher up, and if you run them 35 feet out, whatever, closer to the logo, when that point of attack defender comes off and he's chasing you, well, you still have some room to get a three-point attempt up. You're not automatically inside that arc. So I thought that was key. You saw Brunson get a couple of pull-up threes that way. Wemby's in drop, Fox is behind, but you still have room to get a three. There was a possession where the Knicks, just Cat's on the second side of the floor, and the Knicks hit him right away, and he attacks right away. So I think finding Cat with a lot quicker pace and Cat making that quick decision to face up and then go, that helps get ahead of that Wemby help side rotation before it arrives, right? In the first half, they were slow to attack those. So whenever Cat caught the ball on the post, he automatically had two because he took his time. His back was to the basket so they could send backside help. I thought in the second half you had a couple of moments where they were hitting him quicker and he was able to attack better that way. Much cleaner look. Again, Hart making weak side back cuts with Wemby helping to the first side. Hart takes advantage of that. All right, he's helping off me. I'm going to make a back cut. They're going to hit me at the basket. Nobody's there. you saw a possession like that. I think Mike Brown ran with his Mitch Robinson, Josh Hart lineups more to force Wemby to guard Mitch. And when you do that, that's going to help you because Mitch is just way too big of an offensive rebounding threat for Wemby to help off of him. Right? We've talked about his offensive rebounding gravity. And Mitch is also just a bigger, better screener than Josh Hart. So Brunson can use those pick and rolls as well to get the space he needs. And then we talk about how playing with full court pace, playing in transition, getting stops and running a full court game is much more preferred when Josh Hart is out there than playing in half court where you allow the defense to set up those help coverages. Well, I thought Mike Brown put the right lineups out there, Hart with Alvarado and Mitch, to allow the Knicks to lean into that style of play, the rebounding, the physicality, the pace. And then, of course, when they got into the half court and Hart was out there, just better ball screening from Hart in the second half of this game. And that forced Fox into a lot tougher recoveries. He was behind a lot more than he was in the first half where he was staying attached to Jalen. So I thought that was big. And that's got to be key. All those things need to continue to happen. And I do want to wrap up this point by saying this because I think this is important. When we're talking about these cross matches and how you beat them, it's good to spam those Hart pick and rolls so Brunson can get that space to shoot his threes, and he can get those switches sometimes onto a slower big. That's good, and that's great, and it makes sense. The problem with doing that over and over is now you're ignoring your highest paid player. And that's ignoring a guy who has already had friction with this head coach regarding not getting his touches and not getting his reps and not being comfortable in this offense. And he's already taking heat from Knicks fans all day, every single day, about not being aggressive enough. So when you play into that style, when it's Brunson Hart pick and roll every time, you are ignoring Cat. And so I think we can't have both worlds as Knicks fans and say Cat's not aggressive enough, but also like, hey, Hart should play. No, you can't really have it both ways. And so this is why, in my opinion, I still think the Knicks going forward need to lean into 5-out offense a lot more than they do. And when you do that, you can't play that style of defense against the Knicks. You have to guard Cat with the big, because despite all the good things we just talked about, the Knicks against the Spurs yesterday were still outscored by 10 points in the 13 minutes they played with that starting lineup. So that's something that still hasn't been adjusted. They're still running out the same lineups. In the meantime, you just have to hope they figure it out within those lineups. But I truly don't believe this team can take a big step in the playoffs unless they're more willing to lean into specific lineups. And maybe that's what Mike Brown's waiting for. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know more than a head coach, because maybe right now he's using the regular season for games like we saw yesterday, so the Knicks can figure this out and still lean into it as part of their back pocket when they go away from their 5-out. That's the positive outlook of it. I want to give a shout out to Mikal Bridges because I feel like we haven't even mentioned his name yet. And whenever we do mention Mikal's name, it unfortunately feels like it's in a negative aspect or a negative way. And that's not always fair to him because I think Mikal had an excellent game yesterday. He went out and he scored 25 points. He shot 10 for 17 and he was 5 for 9 on his threes. So I'm going to give him his 7th game ball of the season. Mikal was, when you play this style of coverage that you do and you cross-match Cat and Hart, it allows Mikal to get the matchups he wants, and he was killing it not only in the mid-range, but he killed it on the three-point line because some of those coverages were off of him. And I think when you talk about shooting and spacing, having OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges both consistently knocking down their corners is very massive for this team. Not just because it's 3 points every time they knock down the shot, but because them being threats to shoot from the corner changes the entire geometry of the floor. Before the shot even happens, I'm talking about. Them just spacing. When both of them are real corner threats, it completely changes how the Knicks are guarded in the middle of the floor, especially on those Brunson and Cat pick and rolls. Because the low man is now constantly in conflict, right? If I'm low man and the Knicks are running pick and roll up the middle and you have OG and Mikal spacing on the corners, do I stunt or fully commit to help at the rim? And then now I'm getting burnt on the hook pass to the corner? Or do I stay home on the perimeter, on the corner, and give up a clean driving lane or an uncontested roll with no tag or no rotation behind it? That's the decision you're forcing the low man into, right? And that tension, that's everything. A lot of the Knicks' offensive success gets framed around Brunson and Cat, and rightly so. But a huge chunk of it is built on the credibility of their corner spacers, of Mikal and OG. When they are both in rhythm, the help rules break down. It breaks down the entire formula for the defense. They cannot load up the same way. The margin for error gets even tinier. All right. So, and of course, those guys, as consistent or as efficient as they are from the corners, they should be constantly involved in these 5-out rotations that we do see from time to time. It should always be involving them, right? In that forces Cat to have the big on them. And then on the flip side, on the whole other side with these two guys, defensively, it's just as important, obviously. You know, when both of them are engaged, the Knicks can switch almost everything without having to worry about, sending help to every isolation, right? Bridges is excellent as a helper and an anticipator. OG is very elite in help, but he's also strong at the point of attack on ball screens, right? Both of them are comfortable switching across positions, especially OG. OG can take point guards on the perimeter. He can absorb wings and isolation. He can battle bigs on a switch or on the roll. And against someone like Wemby, that versatility matters, and you saw it last night. You get to dictate the game this way when you have someone like OG defending Wemby. That third quarter, I did think was an interesting example of what you can do and what you should not do. The Spurs kept going to those wide pin down actions for Wemby to set him up, and the Knicks just couldn't stop it at one point. I think the best way in the future, do these two teams meet again, which would be the finals, I guess, can't be just going under with the big, because you're leaving Wemby open for a three. You can definitely go Cat at the 4 and then have Mitch out there at the 5 and drop coverage and then have Cat go over the top. But I also think OG can be a part of that equation. Having him go over, load up help from the baseline, does that open up other things? Of course it does. There are going to be trade-offs with an alien like Victor Wembanyama. But I do think it's better than switching a small onto Wemby. But if these two Knick wing defenders are on point, this whole thing clicks. But if they're not on point, this whole thing falls apart. Because both Brunson and Cat, as your two biggest minutes eaters, are also your two worst defenders. So they need those guys. They need OG. They need Mikal to be on their games defensively to help compensate for their problems. Sorry, I think we just lagged there. So I thought in this game, the Knicks did a nice job staying connected on their switches, making their rotations in the back. Not just Mikal and OG, but shout out to Josh Hart too for one of his better defensive performances. As much noise as we made about him negatively in the first few minutes of the game, I did think his next couple of stints were a lot better. And like we mentioned, he was much better screening in the second half. But his defense picked up too. So with that said, we're going to head to our break, get back, and talk about what's coming up with these Knicks. Stay with us.
Quick break here, guys. Stay connected with BD4 on social media. Follow us on Instagram and X at BD4Pod, and find us on Facebook by searching BD4. Don't miss out. Join the conversation. Want more BD4? Subscribe to our YouTube channel and never miss an episode. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and share with your fellow fans. Don't forget to ring that bell so you're always the first to know when a new video drops. Love BD4 but don't have the time to sit down and watch? Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, leave us a 5-star rating and a quick review. It helps us grow and keeps the conversation going.
Okay, welcome back to the show. I appreciate you all for tuning into the podcast. Episode 1015 of BD4. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you very much for doing so. Fun win against that team, man. And man, that's the formula, right? That's the formula for when you have those lineups out there, I should say. But it was a good win. The Knicks figured it out. A nice two-way win against a tough team. And now they have a day off today as they travel to Toronto to play tomorrow night, and then that's the first of a back-to-back where you have to face OKC on the second of a back-to-back on Wednesday as you travel back to the Garden. So that's not going to be easy. And then the Knicks go out west after that. So after this back-to-back set, Toronto OKC, they've got a 5-game West Coast trip. They're in Denver. They're in LA for the back-to-back against the Lakers and Clippers. Then they're playing Utah. And I think they wrap up the road trip against Indiana before they go back home. So that is what's up next on the schedule for your Knickerbockers. But with that said, let's wrap this episode up with our trivia question of the day. And that question is, when was the last time the Knicks or Spurs won more than 3 straight games against each other? All right, when was the last time the Knicks or Spurs won more than 3 straight games against each other? So let me know the answer wherever you can reach me. And I appreciate it. Appreciate everybody who's tuned in. So I will see you all on the next show. That is going to do it. Knicks Spurs. Knicks beat them 114-89. Got Toronto up next. I'll see you soon. Hey guys, thank you for listening to BD4. Be sure to follow us on social media, subscribe to us on YouTube, and give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. We'll see you next time.